Hello and happy December. I am coming at you with a reading wrap up. November was a really good reading month. I hope you're seeing this after my October wrap up. I haven't edited anything for like a month. I just haven't wanted to. I have it all filmed. I just haven't wanted to. So, November was a really good reading month, and I have made some serious progress on my owned library numbers. This month, I only added 3 books, and 2 of them are borrowed, so I didn't actually pay for 2 of these. I'm borrowing them from my mom, and I'm going to return them to her after I read them. So I borrowed The Son of the Morning by Akweki Emezi and The Build a Boyfriend Project by Mason Beaver. And then Girl Dinner was my aardvark pick for the month. Somewhere along the way, I kind of lost track of how many books I was keeping and getting rid of. I think of the books that I read or DNF'd this month, I'm only getting rid of 2 and keeping the rest for the time being. That DNF was What the Dickens by Gregory Maguire. I read Wicked earlier this year. I think it might have been in a vlog. I can't remember for sure if that vlog has actually seen the light of day, but I didn't enjoy it. I'm not really interested in the movie. I have seen the musical and I liked the musical. I just don't think I get the hype about the movie, and I think seeing so many people enjoying it has kind of put me off a little bit. And it's not that they're enjoying it, like their enjoyment is not really the issue. The issue is how many people and how loudly they are enjoying it. We live across the street from a movie theater, and for 2 weeks straight now, there have been people like in the parking lot at midnight screaming and singing the songs, and I'm glad that they're having a good time, but it's also just annoying. So anyways, I tried reading this. This was the second time I tried it, and I still just couldn't get into it, so I'm getting rid of it. This is an ARC, so I don't know if I'll try to sell it or not. The book is already out, so it's not like illegal for me to sell the ARC, but also the ARCs that I have don't really do well when I try to sell them, so I'm probably just gonna put it in a little free library somewhere. And then the other book that I will be getting rid of is In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. I honestly didn't even want this book. I think it was like the very last Fairy Loot book that I got. I am going to keep it so that my husband can read it, because he read The House in the Cerulean Sea, I think, and really enjoyed it. I don't think he ever read the other one that he came out with, the Under the Whispering Door, I think is what it was called. I read both of those and I did enjoy them, but knowing what I know now about the author and what he was inspired by, specifically for The House in the Cerulean Sea, just kind of gives me an ick. And with this book specifically, I had more icks than just that. Also, I'm just now like opening this and seeing, I don't know if you can tell, but there's like a line. I don't know how well this book was made, but it doesn't look very good. The back isn't like that though, it's just the front. But anyways, my other problem that gave me an ick with this is that the main character, I can't remember if it is explicitly said that he is asexual or if it is just very heavily implied, but the main character is assumed to be asexual, and all of the other characters continue to push him and make fun of him for not being sexually interested in people. And I feel like there is a way that this could have been done where this pushing and prodding wasn't as upsetting to me as it ended up being, but the author did not take it that way. I think if he had approached it from the angle of this main character has grown up with nothing but robots as examples, so he's never had another human being or even another like humanoid robot to be romantically interested in or sexually interested in, and this is like him exploring that and thinking maybe he isn't actually asexual and that was just circumstance, I feel like I could have maybe been okay with that, but that was not the way it was presented. It's just people, or not even people, they're droids. Because this is like a post-apocalyptic world, kind of. And the main character is the only human that we see in the book for the most part. So these robots are making fun of him the entire time for not being comfortable with sexual activity. And I don't enjoy that. So I will be getting rid of this after my husband has the time to read it. But before I talk about the rest of the books, I just wanted to make sure I explained why I was getting rid of those. Let's go over some stats. So if you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen a few unhaul videos. I do still have one sitting in my draft waiting to be edited. I just haven't really had a moment to myself, and when I try to edit Instagram videos with my headphones on, it messes up the audio for some reason. So I'm going to edit it now that I have time, and because of that unhaul, I am down to 730 owned books from 744 the month before. And then my total for unread books is 409, down from 433. So that's a big jump. If I read as much as I did in November and December, or even like 2/3 as much, I can still get under 400 by the end of the year, and I think that will feel really good if I manage to do it. Going over a few more stats, I read a total of 15 books, not including the DNF. Storygraph doesn't count DNFs in your read total. So I attempted 16 books and read 15. I have 5 books that I am currently reading, 2 of which I started in November, and the other 3 I started at other points in the year and just haven't finished them yet. Those 15 books totaled up to 5,065 pages. I think it's a new record for me, if I'm being honest. And then the other statistics I thought were interesting this month were the page count. 1/3 of the books that I read were under 300 pages, and 2/3 were between 300 and 500 pages. So I wasn't necessarily reading small books, but I read more small books than I normally do. And then it was all fiction this month. I do have nonfiction that I want to read, but I have read the nonfiction that was on my 25 and 25, so I'm focusing on other things for the rest of the year. And the genres, Storygraph has a genre for LGBTQIA+, and that is my most read one this month, which is new for me. I don't always read, I always try to read LGBTQIA+ books, but it doesn't always happen, just because I didn't really start collecting those books until recently. So what I have to pull from isn't always diverse. And then the next highest genre I read was fantasy. And then romance and horror are neck and neck with 4 books each. And surprisingly, I actually read 3 science fiction. I don't always read science fiction because I also haven't really collected science fiction that much. And then I have 2 literary, 2 historical, 2 contemporary, 1 thriller, 1 mystery, and 1 manga. My average rating was a 4.07. I definitely had the most 4 stars. I had a few that were lower, like in The Lives of Puppets, I gave 2.75 because I felt like it, and then I had a 3-star, a 3.5, a 3.75, 2 4.5s, and 3 5-stars. So overall, it was a pretty good reading month. There were a few duds, a few books that I was a little disappointed by, but didn't hate. I think those are the stats. I have the books separated based on genre because that felt like a fun way to film them this time, and I wanted to make this fun so that I would actually do it. So we will start out with my horror, what I read the most of. This is what we are working with. I don't think I've talked about any of them in a vlog, so I will try my best to give you a brief synopsis and my rating. So I actually have 5 horror books that I read. I'm going to talk about the one that I don't have physically first, and that is Wretch by Eric LaRocca. This was an arc. Let me see when it comes out. The current publication date for this book is March 24th of 2026, so you have about 4 months before this book comes out. I personally liked it. This focuses on a man who has recently lost his husband, who in the last year or so that they were married, he had left him. I don't know if they actually got divorced, but his husband had left and they no longer lived together. They were no longer romantically involved. But our main character, who I think their name is Simon, I think that's how it's pronounced, but I'm not positive. It's spelled Simeon. I'll put it up here so you can see it. And he hasn't really gotten the closure that he wants from this relationship. His husband ends up dying of cancer after he leaves the relationship, and he ends up seeking out grief groups, I guess is the best way to call it, and he finds one, and this group focuses on pictures that the members have taken and think that they see their deceased loved one in, essentially. But this group doesn't end up working out for him, and he ends up in something a bit darker than what this group does, and we just follow him throughout the book, throughout his grief journey, essentially. I will say that the ending of this was not as satisfying as I wanted it to be, and I wish that we had gotten more, not necessarily explanation, but more exploration of the relationship he had with his deceased husband and how they ended up where they were right before his husband died. And at one point, there was a conversation that the main character was having within his brain about gay men being unable to be monogamous. And when I first read it, I was a little upset about it. I'm not a gay man though, so I don't know if this is upsetting for the community as a whole, or if it was just upsetting to me, because I know if somebody was writing about my sexuality and they made an overarching claim like that, I would have been annoyed. However, it ends up going on to be very, very clear that this probably isn't Eric's personal opinion, and it's a result of the main character and what has happened with his husband. I won't say more than that, but it ended up not being something that bothered me as much as I originally thought it was going to be. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I am very intrigued, and I want to try more Eric LaRocca in the future. Next up, we have Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfeld. I ended up enjoying this one quite a bit. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this all over the internet. It was very popular last year, for the year that it came out, 2022. I actually asked for this specific cover for my birthday because the American cover is ugly, in my opinion. I liked this one a lot more. And I finally read it, so thank you, Mom, for giving me this for my birthday 3 years ago. I rated this one 4 stars. For those of you who have not read it, this is about a woman who has returned from a submarine trip that ended up lasting much, much longer than it was originally planned, and some strange things start happening when she comes back. She's not quite the same. She doesn't really talk much. She is obviously not okay. And then some even weirder things start happening after that. And I will just leave it at that. I gave it 4 stars. I kind of wish it was longer. The same thing with Wretch. I wish we got a little bit more. That's the only reason it's not a 5. I liked the writing a lot. I also read Private Rights by this author last month, I think, October. And I enjoyed that. I kind of think I might enjoy Private Rights more than I enjoyed this one, but they were both 4 stars. So, next up, we have The Library at Hellebore, or Hellebore, I think is how the audiobook narrator pronounced it. This is a book about the Hellebore Technical Institute and how they eat their graduating students at the end of the year, essentially. The students who go to this university aren't, or it's an institute, I guess, not a university, they aren't all willing participants. Some of them were taken against their will because they have powers. I don't know, I would compare them to maybe mutants in the X-Men. That's what I was thinking of when I was listening to this book. But they're not quite the same. These people are taken to the school. It's unclear to me if every single one of the students was abducted or if some of them willingly came. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I do believe some of them willingly came to this institute. But on graduation day, the faculty go on a ravenous rampage, and our main character and a group of her classmates manage to escape, and they are stuck in the library. And they're like trying to barter for their survival. Lots of people die, and I will be completely honest with you, just listening to the audiobook of this was a mistake. I should not have done that. I should have been tandem reading at the very least the whole time. And the reason I say that is because the chapter titles are often the same. So like this takes place over 3 days, 2 or 3 days, and we have day 1 as a chapter title and then before as a chapter title, and it goes back and forth between those two for quite a while, and then we get to day 2 and the chapter title changes to day 2 and goes back and forth between day 2 and before, and then we eventually get to the after. I just found out that there was an exclusive deleted scene in the Evernight edition that I should go back and read. Anyways, where I was going with that was that it was difficult to follow because of the naming convention of the chapter titles. I don't think that this was necessarily a bad book. I just think that you need to be prepared going in to know that the chapter titles are confusing. And I was reading some reviews afterwards because I was trying to figure out like what had I just listened to. And a few reviews mentioned that although they did not like the chapter setup because it was hard to follow, once they finished the book, they think that it was like not a plot device necessarily, but they think the author was very deliberately making the chapters confusing because of some things that are happening in the book. They're like mimicking what's happening in the book so that you kind of feel a little crazy while you're reading it, because the characters kind of feel a little crazy. And so that changed my mind a little bit about my rating. I did end up rating it higher than I thought I was going to. I gave it a 3.75, and for the time being, I'm going to hold on to it, and I kind of want to revisit it next year when I have time to sit down and at the very least tandem read. I might just physically read it. We'll have to wait and see. All right, next up in horror, which I guess this is a thriller more than horror. This is The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. I gave this one 4 stars. This was on the NPR Best Books of 2024 list that I am trying to read through what I own from. And this, I don't think, is my favorite Lucy Foley. It was still good. I had a couple of issues with it. So this is following a myriad of characters. We have so many characters in this one, and I think part of the problem I had with it was that I listened to it and didn't have it in front of me, and I kind of got some of the characters confused. That's on me, not the book, so I didn't factor that into my rating. But we are following guests at a new resort that has been opened on a piece of property that used to be like a private, not castle, but like a private residence for a rich family. The grandfather has recently passed away, and the granddaughter has taken over the estate, and instead of leaving it as just a private estate, she has decided that she wants it to be a big fancy resort. And she is having some issues with the townspeople who have lived there their whole lives and have always used this access next to her property to get to the beach. And so she is struggling with them. If I'm being honest, I hated being in her head. Her point of view was so annoying. But we are getting points of view from her, points of view from, I think, just one of the staff. There might be more from the staff, and then points of view from her husband, who is not who she thinks he is. And then I think we also have a point of view from a woman who is at the resort, but she's not rich, like she's not the target demographic. And honestly, the only reason she is there is because she is somehow related to our resort owner. And I think someone doesn't die at the beginning, but we are getting flashbacks to when the woman who's at the resort and connected to the resort owner and the resort owner, who is the granddaughter, were teenagers, I think. I think they were 17 or 18. And we are getting flashbacks about something that happened one summer. I think it was a summer, while they were in this town. Someone might have died. I liked this one okay. The rich people attitude did kind of get to me at some point, which normally isn't an issue for me because I eat up rich people drama, and part of my enjoyment is like how ridiculous they are. But there was a scene pretty early on, like probably in the first 100 pages, where all of the guests are like out at the pool, and I don't remember if our character that we're getting a point of view from was thinking this, or if this was just Lucy Foley writing it, but there was a lot of commentary on people's bodies and like how pudgy they were and things like that, and it made me a little bit uncomfortable. I don't think it was necessary for the story. I don't think it added anything to the rich people drama, so I just kind of wish that wasn't in there, and that's the main reason I didn't rate it 5 stars like I have given other Lucy Foley books. The rich people got to me in this one. That's the primary critique. I liked the mystery though. I did not guess it until the end, which I might not have been paying as close attention as I normally do, but I tend to not be able to guess Lucy Foley's twist, which is something that I enjoy. Last on the horror list is one that I want to give like a very strong trigger warning for. I don't think the cover necessarily needs a trigger warning, but the rest of the book definitely does. If you look under the cover in the end pages, there's it's pretty messed up imagery, which fits the book really well. I'm not saying I don't want like different stuff on the book. I just don't want to show it to you because it could be triggering for some people. But this book is following Crane, who is a transgender man. I think he is 20 or 21 years old, and he has run away from home to join the Hive. The Hive is a mass of worms and flies that can get inside your brain and control you a little bit. And the Hive like reaches out to people who are not mentally okay, like people who have been abused or people who are really struggling with their mental health, and they supposedly offer a better life, but I don't think Crane got a better life. Anyways, the premise of this book is that Crane, a transgender man who has run away from home and has been living with this Hive, ends up getting impregnated by another member of the Hive. And there is a lot that goes on in this book that is hard to read. I ended up having to put it down a few times just because of how vivid and dark the imagery was. It was very well written. I am going to give it 5 stars. However, I would not recommend this to everybody. I would say you need to check all of the trigger warnings before you decide that you're going to read this, and make sure that you are okay before you pick it up. This book I buddy read with a few people in Fall Into Steph's Patreon Discord, and we all liked it. I think we all gave it 5 stars, but like is a weird word to use with it, and we had a lot of good discussions about liking a book like this and the difference between like enjoyment and feeling that it was well written and that it really deserves to exist, and that getting this point of view is really important. Yeah, that was the last horror book, so let's move on. I think I read just one contemporary fiction that wasn't like explicitly a romance or some other genre. Yeah, so this is the one contemporary fiction that I read. It does kind of have like romance subplots, but that is not necessarily the focus of the majority of the book. This is following, it's an unnamed narrator. We never get the name of the narrator. So we are following an unnamed narrator who has a PhD in English studies, I think, and she is an adjunct professor who is probably about to lose her job because she hasn't really published anything. She didn't get tenure, that kind of thing. Like, she's about to be let go, pretty much. And she decides that she has no prospects, so she needs to find somebody to marry. And she sets a goal of going on 100 dates. And that goal is quickly derailed because her father, who lives in Iran, has a second heart attack and ends up dying. So trigger warning for a death of a parent. And she has to go to Iran to be there with him while he's going under surgery and sometimes recovering and sometimes declining. And then once he dies, she is the one who gets the house, and she has to figure out what to do with it. And if she wants to continue to live in Iran or if she wants to come back to the United States, which I forgot to mention, she is based in LA for the first chunk of the book. And I will be completely honest, for the first 25-30% of this book, it is just her having sex with people and going on bad dates. And I did find that difficult to relate to, but once we got to see more about her family and her history and her complicated relationship with her mom and her dad, I was sucked in. I ended up really loving it. I think I also gave this one 4 stars. I gave it 4.5. So I liked this more than all the other 4 stars that I gave. I would recommend to people who pick this up that if you are not enjoying it within the first quarter of the book, just push through a little bit further. Just keep pushing a little. She's less insufferable when you start to see her family history, and we get a glimpse into her brain and how it works at that point. And it becomes less about the dates and finding a husband or wife, because she is also into women, and more about her family dynamic and her figuring out what she is actually going to do for her future. Next, I am going to talk about the romances that I read. So the first one that I read this month was Tusk Love by Taya Guanzon, and I think Taya Guanzon might be a new favorite author for me, because I gave this book 5 stars, and I also gave The Hurricane Wars 5 stars, I think. If it wasn't a 5, it was definitely a 4, and a high 4. I really enjoyed it. But Tusk Love is related to a one-shot, I think. I think it's a Critical Role book. I don't really follow Critical Role. I know what D&D is, and I've played it and I've enjoyed it, but I don't watch campaigns right now. That's not something that has been appealing to me in the past. I am considering starting to watch because it seems really interesting, but I don't know anything about Critical Role other than it's a D&D campaign. But this is following Guinevere and I don't remember the guy's name. Guinevere and Oscar. Guinevere is, I think these are both characters in Critical Role, and it's or no, this is a book that a character in Critical Role is reading that somebody actually brought to life, I think is what happened here. So Guinevere is maybe an elf or something. I don't know if we ever find out what species she is, but I'm pretty sure that Oscar is, I want to say orc, but that feels wrong. He has little horns that stick out of his mouth. But anyways, Guinevere is the daughter of a merchant, and Oscar ends up in her vicinity because Guinevere is getting attacked. Yes, so she is in a caravan that gets attacked by bandits, and all of her guards get slain. And for some reason, Oscar decides that he is going to help her get to where she needs to go, and they end up being romantically involved. Long story short, I really loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and I cannot wait to read Monsoon Rising. And honestly, I will read everything else that Taya Guanzon puts out. But I have seen people who liked this book tend to not like the Hurricane Wars, and then people who like the Hurricane Wars have actually told me that they hate this book. I guess the reason they hated it was because Guinevere is kind of useless. Because she has grown up as the daughter of a merchant and has had everything handed to her whole life. She's never had to do laundry or make food or take care of herself, really. And so a lot of people are annoyed by that. It personally did not annoy me, just because it was realistic for her background, in my opinion, but I can see why people wouldn't like that. I don't think that is the case in the Hurricane Wars. Next up on the romance, I have One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. This is not listed as a sequel to Every Summer After, but it kind of is. It's the brother from Every Summer After, who we get a lot of on page, but it's not his romance story. This one is his romance story. And this is set, think it's a few years after Every Summer After. And I guess I can't actually tell you about this because what he did in the first book doesn't really impact the story. So this is following Charlie, the brother from the first one, and a woman named Alice, who is a photographer who happened to also spend that summer at the lake. She was really shy and she never worked up the courage to go talk to these kids, even though she really wanted to. And you can actually see the cover is the picture that she took of them that summer, and that I don't know how to describe it. It was a jumping off point for her photography career. This picture was the first big thing that she put out there. And the people in the boat, I guess in this one, are Alice and Charlie, but in the original picture that she took, it was Charlie, I think his name is Sam. Yeah, Sam and Percy, the characters from the first book. And Alice has come back to the lake for this one summer because her grandma recently fell in dance class and broke her hip, and she has decided that she is going to take care of her grandmother while she is recovering, and she thinks that taking her grandma to the lake will help with the mental health side of things, because her grandmother has become very depressed since losing her mobility, which I can completely understand. It really sucks to have your mobility and then just not have it. One day it sucks to not be able to take care of yourself the way you used to. So this book made me cry a lot. The way that Charlie comes in is that the cabin that Alice and her grandmother are renting for the summer belongs to their friend John, I think. I actually don't remember the friend's name. He's not a huge part of the story. But Charlie takes care of the cabin while this man stays in his home a few hours away because he can't make it out to the cabin very much anymore. And that is how they meet. And yeah, I don't necessarily think that this is enemies to lovers, but Alice is not... she's not amenable. Well, I guess both of them are not amenable to a relationship, and it ends up being a friends with benefits situation that turns into more. So I had a great time. I did not realize that Every Summer After was Carly Fortune's first book, and I can see a definite improvement between that book and this one. Honestly, Every Summer After was kind of perfect. There were a couple small things, mostly with the writing and inconsistencies between scenes, that annoyed me, but the story itself, I couldn't put it down. I was eating it up because we were getting flashbacks between high school and the current day, and I had to know what happened. This book does not have that. We aren't getting flashbacks because I actually don't know why we aren't. We get small flashbacks within chapters, but we are not alternating chapters back and forth like Every Summer After did. The next romance that I read was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I read this as my first read for Cozyathon, which is hosted by Fall Into Steph for her Patreon server. This book was fine. I definitely don't think it was bad, but I do think there could have been more plot development. For those who don't know what this is about, I don't know how you have managed to be on the internet in the bookish world without hearing about this series. This is a series of little romances, I think, that are all set in this small town. I don't know if you can compare it to Gilmore Girls because I haven't actually watched it, but I feel like people have compared it to that. And that also might just be me confusing the author's last name with the show. But anyways, this one focuses on a woman who has recently... I think she quit her job because she came to work one day to find her boss dead in his office, and she had a realization at that moment that she didn't want that to be her life. So she ends up buying the Pumpkin Spice Cafe from her aunt and moving to this small town, and she ends up falling in love with a man there, and that's about it. There's not much more to it. You get back and forth between her and the townspeople, and she ends up becoming integrated into the town and becoming a part of it rather than just the person who owns the cafe. And it was cute, but once we got to the halfway point, the rest of the book just ended up being sex scene after sex scene, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but there was very little plot development after the halfway point. I am going to continue the series. They probably aren't going to be a high priority for me, especially if the next one I read has the same issue, but they're cute. They're nice little romances to break up everything else that I'm reading. And then the last romance that I read is also a fantasy romance. I'm kind of lumping those together. And I have talked about this in a vlog that hasn't come out yet. I'm not done with it yet. I don't know when I will be done with it, but I don't want to spoil that vlog. So I read The Songbird and the Heart of Stone, and I'll give you a general consensus that I liked it. It was good. I ordered the sequel. And then the last little chunk of books that I have are just like general fantasy, I think. Oh, I also have a manga to talk about. We'll leave that for the end. So the first book that I read this month was Shanghai Immortal. I read this for my Fairy Loot vlog, so I'm not going to give you too much information on it again, but I was very surprised by this. I found this book to be very funny, and I gave it a 4.5, and I do plan to read the next book, but I think it's too late for me to get the Fairy Loot copy if there was one. And then I have The Last Hour Between Worlds, which is also for an Illumicrate blog, so I'm not going to tell you much about it. This one I didn't love as much as Shanghai Immortal, but I was pleasantly surprised by this one. I do plan to read the sequel, and I don't know that it got a sequel from Illumicrate. It might have, and I didn't buy it. So if I do read the sequel, I don't know that I'm going to keep this copy. It kind of depends on if the sequel is really good. If I really love the sequel, then I might keep this and try to get a matching edition. Right. And then the last book that I read this month, but not the last book I'm going to talk about, was The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This is another of NPR's best books of 2024, and I personally don't think it was one of the best books of 2024, if I'm being completely honest. I liked this, but I didn't love it, and I kind of want to try rereading it maybe sometime next year with the audio and the physical book in front of me, because I ended up only listening to it, and I think I just wasn't into it because I just wasn't really into the audiobook, but I got a little bit bored, and that's why I rated it a 3, I think. Yeah, I gave it a 3-star. And if I'm being honest with you, I can't tell you much about it because I was so bored that I just forgot what happened, which is weird for Leigh Bardugo because I have read, I can't remember the name of the trilogy, the trilogy that's in the Grishaverse. I read that. I liked the first 2 books a lot, and then the 3rd book was a disappointment. Not because it was boring, but because I felt like Leigh... the word that I remember using is that the main character had a cop-out. I just really didn't like the way that book ended. And then I am reading Six of Crows right now, and it's okay so far. I am intrigued, but I am not sucked in and like devouring it like I was Shadow and Bone. And then I also have read Ninth House and Hellbent, and I really liked Ninth House. Hellbent wasn't as good, but they were both like 4 and 5 stars. But this one, I don't know what happened. This feels like a different author to me, if I'm being completely honest. This book is about Lucia, and I think we get a few chapters from like her master. So Lucia is technically a servant, but it is found out that she has magical powers, which at first it seems like it's going to be a big problem, I think because of like the Crusades. It's set during the time of the Crusades, and magic is not really accepted in religion a lot of the time. So she is worried that she's going to be caught and found out by the Crusaders, and then she ends up getting caught, but still somehow, I don't know, I think she ends up joining like a royal competition or something. I'm not really sure what happened. That's about all I remember. I'm being completely honest. I didn't love it. But I also feel like I could have liked it more if I was paying closer attention to it. So I'm going to keep it for the time being, with the expectation that if I reread it and I'm having the same problem and I'm still bored, I'm not going to finish the reread and I'm just going to get rid of it. So it's just a book in the month copy too, so I'm not that attached to it. But yeah. Then the last book I have to talk about it's going to be short because it's the 14th in a series, so I can't tell you much about it. without spoiling the rest, but I read the 14th volume of Spy Family, and I had a great time. This one focuses on Anya getting an actually decent grade in one of her final exams, and then they have a dance. And that's the majority of it. These aren't very long. They have like 6 little episodes in them, and that's the majority of what happened and the majority of what I can remember. I did read this towards the beginning of the month, so other books are, I can't think of the word, other books are knocking around in my brain more than this one is. But I had a good time. I hope my library gets the next volume soon, but I don't even know if it's out in the US yet. So I think I am going to switch over to Witch Hat Atelier. I'm not sure how you pronounce the last name, but I'll pop it up here so you know what I'm talking about. Because I recently found out that my library has a lot of the volumes, and there is a manga version, not manga, an anime version coming out next year, and there is also a bind up of all of the volumes coming up next year. So I want to read them all and see if the bind up is worth my money. Yeah, that is everything I read in November. Thank you for sticking with me. I don't know how long this video is, but it feels like it's very long. Hopefully December is as good of a reading month as November was. If you have nothing else to say, leave me your favorite aquatic emoji for Our Wives Under the Sea. Yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you are having a good time wherever you are, or at least an okay time wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!